All right, let's break down the Notre Dame defensive backfield. Man, this is I'm excited to go through this one, Lou, because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of question marks. I mean, what do we always talk about with Notre Dame and in closing the gap is you know as much as folks say you got to build your team on the offense and defensive line. Notre Dame's kind of good there, but they have a gap to close out on the perimeter. So plenty of question marks for Notre Dame going into the to the season and into the spring. I mean, what are some things that you feel like the Notre Dame staff is going to want to get answered with this secondary?
Well, hopefully you're able to find answers at the cornerback position because, Clarence Lewis came through last year as a freshman. But you have 9 cornerbacks right now, Mike, where 8 of them have 4 years of eligibility remaining because last year was basically a free year. And that's even including somebody like a Cam Hart, who actually is entering his junior season, but he redshirted as a freshman 2 years ago, and then last year was a free year. So out of those 8, I mean, you hope to find at least two guys, maybe 3, that are ready to earn the trust and confidence of the coaching staff. Last year we saw that there wasn't that confidence because you brought in Nick McLeod from North Carolina State, who did a good job at the boundary position. Um, and then the same at the receiver position. Ben Skoranek was a valuable addition as well because there was nothing really proven, and the injuries just took their toll. Now, running back was another position last year because you brought in Trevor Spates as yet another graduate transfer from
That didn't work.
Stanford. That didn't work because he didn't pass his physical. But the great thing was you saw guys like Kyron Williams and then freshman Chris Tyree emerge as the first 2 backs. And then even Sibo Flemister made enough of an improvement where there was confidence putting him in. That's what you want to see really at that cornerback position where they don't have to say at the end of spring, man, we got to go into this transfer portal again and just find somebody because otherwise we're in trouble. So I think that's kind of just the first goal in itself at the corner position.
So your most proven cornerbacks returning this season: Clarence Lewis, Tariq Bracy. I mean, not even looking at the recruiting rankings for them, both 3-star guys. Um, as nice of a piece as Clarence Lewis is, and I was already wrong on him. I saw him as a developmental guy. I think he shocked even the Notre Dame staff with how ready he was as a true freshman. So he could take a big jump. Like he could be one of these answers that Notre Dame's looking for at the cornerback position. Bracy seemed to take a step back from 19 to 20 when we did our top 25 most valuable or most important players. Can't remember what we exactly called it going into the season. Tariq Bracy was a top 5 guy because we expected him to take a big jump. Uh, Little did we know he was going to get passed up on the depth chart by a true freshman and a 3-star recruit from New Jersey. So when you look at the cornerback position, maybe one of these true freshmen can make a dent in the roster. You lose Nick McLeod. He was your boundary corner. Who could play like if Lewis and Bracy's your 1-2 punch there at the field spot, then who's playing against those bigger receivers?
And you wonder, can one of them move over to the boundary
More
position?
likely
Ideally,
Lewis. More likely
uh,
Lewis because he's about
it,
6'6", 6'1". Bracy's around 5'9", 5'10".
yeah, yeah, because on the boundary side, the short side of the field, that's where the Chase Claypools, the Miles Boykins, the Equanimous St. Browns, the 6'5", or the 230-pound guys like Claypool or Boykin. When you go one-on-one against a 5'10", 5'11" cornerback there, that speaks to a lot of jump balls and a lot of physicality. You got to be able to hold up in that area as well. So that's going to be intriguing because both Lewis and Tariq played on the field side. A couple years ago, as a sophomore, Tariq Bracy actually led the team in passes broken up with 7, and was more than just a serviceable individual. You could see him rising in his development, and you were confident going into his junior year that he was perhaps ready to take that next step. And for the most part, early in the first half of the season, he took most of the snaps, but then they were monopolized, beginning with that Clemson game on November 7th by Clarence Lewis. And look, there was great praise from Brian Kelly in the preseason because he compared him right away to Kavari Russell, who came in 2012 kind of as a running back slot figure. But there was such an acute need at the corner position that they moved him there. And in 2 weeks, as a freshman, he took over and became a freshman All-America on a team that went 12-0 during the regular season, made it to the BCS championship, and was giving up only 10 points a game, the best figure at Notre Dame in over 30 years. So that was high praise indeed. That raised a lot of eyebrows last August. From the outset, I think after just 2 or 3 weeks, or prior to the Duke opener, Clarence Lewis was listed as an or with Tariq Bracy, which
Mm-hmm.
surprised us the most as far as having a co-starting role.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. You would have thought if it was one of those true freshmen, Caleb Offord, the guy who Oklahoma was after and was a Mississippi Alabama All Star, or Ramon Henderson was the highest ranked of the group. But nope, Clarence Lewis, the guy who barely even played corner during his high school career, goes in and starts at Notre Dame.
Mike, I thought maybe KJ Wallace, because the previous August when there were practices open, he was the guy who kind of always stood out to me as ready to make plays. And he just was conspicuous with the way he was around the ball all the time. And I thought he would be a dark horse figure, but he moved to safety.
Lou, you're like, what does Notre Dame have here at corner? You have Bracy and Lewis, we just touched on. Maybe Cam Hart at the boundary spot, and then you're looking at 6 guys: Ramon Henderson, Caleb Offord in that 2020 class, and then your 4 true freshmen: Ryan Barnes, Philip Riley, Chance Tucker, JoJo Johnson. That's the cornerback group. That's what Notre Dame has going into the season. So it's like they're gonna have to play you know, a boundary and a field corner and a nickel. Who are they going to play?
Well, that's why, at the start of this segment, we talked about what you want is just coming out of the spring is a confidence from the coaching staff that we don't need to rush to the transfer portal like last year and say who is out there. I mean, that to me would just be not a good omen as far as the development
If you see them go to the
process there.
portal, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And look, if there's somebody who is just too good to pass up, fine. No one's going to have any objection to that. But it's also when you have 8 guys with 4 years of eligibility like that, you hope you can hit on a couple of them. And maybe it might take until their junior or senior years. Who knows? But most of the time, you look at the top corners here in the Brian Kelly era or any era. There's that old saying: if they're going to start biting, they're going to do it as a pup. And whether it was Kavari Russell or Clarence Lewis, or even Cole Luke, or later in his career here, or as a freshman or sophomore when he played quite a bit, you got to start making that move into that lineup and start gaining the confidence of the coaching staff, the trust that he can be put out there. And especially at that position with the type of offenses you're going to be facing all the time. They're not all going to be Alabama's, but there's going to be some pretty good with North Carolina and
Yeah.
USC. Just some good receivers there that you're going to be playing and have to be able to cover.
Let's get right into the X factor of this cornerback room. Who or what it is. I'll start. It's got to be Cam Hart for me.
Absolutely,
Um,
same here.
yeah, well, actually, you take Cam Hart, and you can touch on Cam Hart. I'll go with someone else then. I think Ryan Barnes might be the sleeper of the cornerback and the entire defense as a guy who is a true freshman, not ranked very high, Lou, because you look at the size listed at 6'1", 7/8, 182 pounds. I mean, this is what they're listed at. Notre Dame usually does a good job of being pretty truthful and accurate on these height and weights. So um, Ryan Barnes could be a guy who, makes a dent somewhere. Maybe he does get meaningful reps at the boundary position. This might be a little bit of a stretch here because he didn't play a senior season in 2020 because Maryland didn't play high school ball there, but he's an early entrant. And a guy who was great size, and it's not like he was sitting on the couch all of quarantine. He was getting work in, so I think Ryan Barnes might be someone to keep an eye on. He seems pretty good in coverage.
Well, I have to go with Cam Hart here, and I think originally you wanted to as well.
Yeah.
But Cam and Kendall Abdur-Rahman were the only two wide receiver recruits in the 2019 class. And Kendall is actually, he's worked at running back. Maybe he might be in the slot. But midway through his freshman season, Cam Hart was moved to the cornerback position. And usually, players of his caliber, they like the glory of catching footballs, as a wide receiver, and have these dreams of catching 60, 70, 80 passes and, yards after the catch for scoring touchdowns and all. He said, this was surprising, even his high school senior season, is, yeah, I'll play receiver, but, I really feel that my best future might be at the cornerback position because I can control more stuff there. And that he was already thinking long range as far as NFL prospect. And most high school kids do that, and they're some reality hits them once they come here. But that's a position he had looked at himself all the way through. He's got that long range, that Dante Vaughn type of physique, 6'2", about 208 or so, listed at 6'2.5" actually. So he's got that length. He's able to match up many times with those 6'4" receivers in the boundary, the physicality aspect. He's going to be an intriguing prospect because he will be also the fourth different starter in the last, potentially. Let's put it that way, because you've had three straight starters there. Consensus All-America Julian Love in 2018, Troy Pride, who was also a fourth round pick like Julian Love in 2019, and then last season you had the graduate transfer Nick McLeod. So this is just going to be such a crucial element and piece. A couple of years ago, they auditioned Houston Griffith, who's a safety right now, in the spring to hopefully take over at that position, but it just didn't work out, and they just felt safety would be his future as well. So a lot of dominoes could hopefully fall into place if somebody such as Cam Hart can lock down that boundary corner position.
And now let's ask the question: is this unit, the cornerback position, better than it was a year ago? I feel like for a lot of these position groups, we're saying no, but that's just because we're kind of looking at what they lost, and because what they lost, you don't know what that jump is going to be from 2020 to 2021 with a lot of guys. Like, could Tariq Bracy take a big step? Clarence Lewis, like that. So we're going a little bit with more from what we know standpoint than the unknown. So with that being said, the cornerback position, Lou, do you feel like this unit is improved from last year? You lose Nick McLeod, you return everyone else, right?
Well, you like to use the hopeful knowledge or logic that you improve from year to year. And it's like we've mentioned, there's 8 guys here with 4 years of eligibility. Now, guys such as Caleb Alford and Ramon Henderson, they did not have the luxury of spring practice
Right.
last year. And I think that kind of helped Clarence Lewis too, because he wasn't an early entrant. So can he take that next step? We saw it doesn't work automatically like that where you improve from year to year. Tariq Bracy had a really solid sophomore season, but took a dip as a junior to where even Clarence Lewis, a true freshman, moved ahead of him. So that's not automatic. Just because you gain a year doesn't mean you're going to gain, you know, better knowledge, or maybe you might have better knowledge, but might just not translate onto the football field necessarily with the skill set. So I'd say it's very similar, Mike. Last year at this time, we do a position ranking 1 through 10, including special teams. Where is Notre Dame the strongest going into the spring, and etc. And this is the second year in a row we basically have the cornerback position at 9th or 10th, the last position as well. And let's remember also last year, not only did you have to bring in Nick McLeod, but you absolutely, the coaches needed Sean Crawford to return for a 6th year with the understanding that, okay, maybe he can help at cornerback as well. Well, you know, when they got Nick McLeod, okay, he took one of the cornerback positions along with Tariq, but now you also had the luxury of moving Sean Crawford to safety as well. So that's another position that kind of needed that experience factor before there was a trust and confidence in the coaches of playing anyone else.
So yeah, unit not improved, just about the same. I think
Yeah,
that's
until somebody emerges. That's why we're talking, you know, with 8 guys there, and that's not including Tariq Bracy, but with 8 guys with 4 years of eligibility, you want at least two, along with Clarence Lewis, to come out this spring where you say, or the coaches say, okay, there's a trust factor here. But then even that, then you don't really know until you get into game situations. That's the real test when the lights come on.
all right. Well, let's get into the safety unit. They have a decent player in a guy named Kyle Hamilton. I think he's on scholarship and might play a little bit this season. I'm kidding, of course. Let's just get this out of the way. Kyle Hamilton is a freak. He's one of the best players over on the country. Potential top 10 pick in the 2022 NFL draft. A 3-and-done guy. Been a mainstay in Notre Dame's defense since 2019, his true freshman season. What makes him so special, Lou?
Oh, just the range, instincts, yeah, you name it. I mean, how often do you see somebody 6'4", 219 who's able to move that way, who's able to, you know, cover various things? And I think what's underrated is his just ability to come in and also hit. He's not afraid to mix it up as well. He's not just that center fielder guarding that back end there. He's willing to come up. We got just about everything you'd ever want to see in that free safety position. I don't know how much more you can really say.
So yeah, the Kyle Hamilton really good at football, no doubt about that. But
But,
who might
but
play?
one thing, Mike, though, is that you know he suffered that ankle injury in the Duke game, and that limited him. He wasn't able to play the next week against USF, and it might have been a season-long hindrance. You know, there's it looks like he will be limited in the spring as well. So there's going to be a lot more reps given to the other individuals. I think everyone has a pretty good understanding of what Kyle Hamilton can do, but getting the reps for the Houston Griffiths, the DJ Browns, and then so many others who are going to be in the mix, that's going to be essential.
Yeah, it's like you have an 18-year NFL veteran quarterbacks. Like, does he really need to go through the bumps and bruises of um, training camp or some other position? It's like you have a 14-year offensive lineman. It's like, does he really does he really? It's not a perfect illustration, but like Kyle Hamilton, you know what you have there, so let him rest, let him get healthy, and let's see what some of these other guys have. I feel better about safety than I do corner. Not just like even putting Kyle Hamilton aside. Houston Griffiths played plenty of ball. DJ Brown has plenty of experience. KJ Wallace is intriguing. So you have Kyle Hamilton. That's great. The second safety position, though, Lou, some intriguing names with some decent upside too.
Well, it's now or never for Houston Griffith. He came in as a freshman, as a top 50 prospect. He had the highest ranking among everybody in Notre Dame's 2018 class, which was, you know, filled with quite a few good players there. But he was the number 43 player overall in the country per Rivals. And right away, you saw in spring ball, he had a presence, and the coaching staff said, we got to get him on the field in some capacity. And he was given that nickel role for most of the year. It wasn't Coverage wasn't quite his forte. So what they did was later in the year they moved a veteran Nick Coleman to that nickel position. So then as a sophomore, it's like, okay, we need some help. We need somebody to replace our consensus All-American Julian Love at the boundary corner position. Now, once again, Houston was somebody, here's a guy with great skill sets. He's a sure tackler. He can be physical and all. And they felt an intriguing corner duo with Troy Pride and Houston Griffith. But that didn't quite work out either. So during the fall, they said, okay, safety's going to be his future. Let's just get him the reps there. So last year, it's like, okay, now here's a wonderful opportunity. Both of the starters and co-captains from 2019, Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott, have moved on. We've got Kyle Hamilton covering the free safety. This is a perfect opportunity to seize that starting role. And what happens? Sean Crawford is moved from nickel and cornerback to that strong safety position and ended up starting all 12 games there as well. So I think there was a frustration probably that set in with Houston, which is why he was temporarily in the transfer portal this January. And then you brought in a new defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman. They were able to talk him back into rejoining the team. And hopefully this is a fresh beginning, but it is a now or never situation for him as far as establishing himself there. And the one thing, Mike, that's, does give you encouragement. Notre Dame faced one of the most prolific offenses in the country last November in North Carolina. And in that second quarter, Kyle Hamilton was ejected for a targeting penalty. And you're saying, oh man,
Mm.
they're in trouble now. They gave up, 2 touchdowns on the first 2 possessions as it was to North Carolina. And now that you don't have Kyle Hamilton patrolling the back end, Houston Griffith and DJ Brown came in and the defense shut them down. I think they had 78 yards total offense in the second half and just could not do anything. So, against a quality offense, those two demonstrated. Now you have to do it week after week after week, just like we talked about with Shane Simon at linebacker. You had that, really fine game against Clemson on November 7th, but can you do it week after week after week?
X factor of this unit, Lou. Who you got? Who or what?
Well, it's one of those. It's easy to say Houston Griffith just
Then say it.
because is it now or never? But DJ Brown, he came in as a cornerback recruit, moved to the defensive backfield, and actually ended up taking a few more snaps at safety last year than Houston. So, cop out wise, we say one of those two because Sean Crawford seized the moment last year to take that role. Who's going to do it here?
Yeah. I mean, what about KJ Wallace? Could be an intriguing figure too.
He really could. Like I said earlier, when we saw him as a freshman in the 2019 summer camp, he was one of the standouts there. You consistently saw he was wearing number 16 then. It's like I refer to it as that this guy is always around the football, seems to be present, and it seemed to be on the cusp of breaking into the lineup, was even on the 2 deep for a while, but that was more so at cornerback.
Right.
So, they moved him to the safety position. he can be an intriguing figure as well, in that two deep this year.
All right, wrapping up here. Is this unit improved from 2020 to 2021? I'll let you go first, Lou. What do you think for the Irish heading into the spring? Which, by the way, we are expecting it to start late next week.
I like to think there's a slight improvement. Just getting Kyle Hamilton healthy and back for a third season, you're going to have one of the nation's best. Because even last year, even though he was a freshman All-American, he wasn't out there starting, game after game, taking 40, 50, 60 snaps as he was last year. So he got that under his belt, and I think he's now ready to get even one step farther. And hopefully, we see with Houston Griffith and DJ Brown um, a similar type of improvement. They're going to be under a new coach there on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe that might help them as well. So you like to think just with the experience and presence of Kyle Hamilton after a full season there, that it's going to go up a bit.